Captain Jackson Black had seen his fair share of strange worlds during his time with the Galactic Union, but none had prepared him for the vast alien city that sprawled beneath him. The capital of Xylothar was a place of awe and mystery, towering spires reaching into the sky, their surfaces shimmering with energy, and streets that seemed to pulse with life. Every building seemed to hum with the weight of ancient power, a power Jackson knew all too well. This world was ruled by the Xalarian Empire, a formidable alien species that had stood as one of humanity's greatest rivals in the galaxy for decades. He stood now on the deck of his flagship, the Resolute, looking down at the planet from the ship's viewing port. The city below was both alien and familiar, blending the beauty of advanced technology with the rawness of a civilization that had grown from deep roots, one that had lived and died through wars long before humans arrived on the galactic stage. Jackson's mission here was simple on paper: negotiate peace. After years of border skirmishes, intelligence reports, and diplomatic tensions, the time had come for both sides to put their weapons down and seek a solution. But Jackson knew better than to believe peace could be found simply in the paperwork or grand speeches of diplomats. It was something far deeper, something hidden in the unspoken fears, the unhealed wounds of both parties. The task ahead would be harder than anything he had faced. He was part of a select team sent by the Galactic Union to the Xylothar system. The Union saw this as a pivotal moment for both sides. If successful, it could change the fate of the galaxy, ending years of hostilities, opening trade routes, and ultimately uniting two powerful forces in a way that had never been seen before. But peace was fragile, and Jackson knew just how quickly things could turn. He glanced around at his crew, all preparing for their descent into the heart of Xylothar. The atmosphere in the command room was tense, each officer silently knowing the weight of what lay ahead. For them, the risks were high, but failure was unthinkable. If the talks went wrong, they would be caught in the middle of an intergalactic war. With a deep breath, Jackson turned to the comms officer. "Prepare the landing team," he said. The officer nodded, typing commands into the console. Within minutes, the landing shuttle was prepped, and Jackson, along with a small team of diplomats and security personnel, descended toward the surface of Xylothar. The journey through the atmosphere was smooth, but Jackson couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. He had been to many alien worlds, had shaken hands with countless leaders, but something about the Xylothar royal court felt different. The Xalarian Empire was old, their traditions steeped in power and secrecy. They were not the type to easily forgive or forget. It made Jackson uneasy, though he wouldn't admit it aloud. As the shuttle touched down on the palace grounds, Jackson stepped out onto the soft alien grass, his boots sinking slightly into the turf. He was greeted by a delegation of Xylothar officials, their towering forms draped in ceremonial robes. They stood in perfect silence, their bright yellow eyes watching him intently. "Captain Black," said the lead official, a tall, graceful figure whose golden skin shimmered in the sunlight. "We welcome you to Xylothar. The Queen is waiting for you." Jackson nodded, though his mind was already racing. The Queen, Zarathia. The most powerful being on the planet, and a woman whose very presence commanded respect. Her reputation preceded her, cold, calculating, and ruthless in all her dealings. Peace talks with someone like that were never easy. He followed the officials into the palace, the walls towering above him, filled with alien symbols and intricate designs he didn't understand. Everything about the palace spoke of an empire that had endured for centuries, one that valued strength above all else. He could feel the eyes of the Xylothar court upon him as they moved through the halls. The throne room was grand, a massive space with high arches that seemed to stretch endlessly upward. At the far end of the room, seated upon a throne made of shimmering alien metal, was Queen Zarathia herself. Her posture was regal, her eyes narrowing as Jackson entered. "Captain Black," she said, her voice as smooth as silk, but with an undertone of power that sent a shiver down Jackson's spine. "We meet at last." Jackson didn't bow, but he gave a respectful nod. "Your Majesty," he replied, keeping his tone even. "It is an honor to be here." Zarathia studied him for a moment, her eyes cold, calculating. "We shall see how long that honor lasts, Captain. The Xylothar Empire is not easily swayed, but your union has sent you, so I will listen." Jackson held his ground. "I'm here to ensure the future of both our people. If peace can be found, we will take that path. The queen's lips curled into a slight smile, but it was devoid of warmth. Peace is a rare commodity. Many have tried to offer it, but few have succeeded. Tell me, Captain, what makes your union think it can succeed where others have failed? Jackson paused, choosing his words carefully. The galaxy has changed, Your Majesty. We have changed. We need each other more than ever before. A war between us would destroy both our civilizations. I believe we can find a way forward. The Queen's eyes flickered with something unreadable, but she said nothing, simply motioning for the conversation to continue. For the next few hours, Jackson and Zarathia went back and forth, discussing terms, compromises, and the future of their worlds. Every word, every gesture was carefully calculated. Neither party gave an inch, but neither seemed ready to walk away either. It was the dance of diplomacy, delicate, tense, and dangerous. As the meeting neared its end, there was a sudden noise, a disturbance outside the throne room. The guards outside the door shifted, and Jackson's instincts flared. Something wasn't right. Before anyone could react, the doors burst open, and a young figure dashed into the room, her long silver hair flowing behind her. She was breathless, her face streaked with tears, and in a moment that would forever change everything, she ran directly to Jackson, throwing herself into his arms. "Father!" she cried out, her voice full of desperation. The room fell silent. Jackson froze, unable to comprehend what was happening. He looked down at the girl in his arms. Her alien features were unmistakable, her deep violet eyes wide with fear and confusion. Zarathia stood from her throne, her expression a mixture of shock and fury. "Lyra," she whispered, her voice filled with disbelief. "What are you doing?" The young alien princess Lyra clung to Jackson, her tears soaking into his uniform. "Father, please, they are coming for us. I don't know what to do." Jackson, still in shock, managed to find his voice. "I don't understand," he said, his eyes darting between the girl and the queen. "What's going on? What's happening?" Queen Zarathia's eyes narrowed, and for the first time in the meeting, Jackson saw a flicker of fear. She stepped forward, her voice low, almost a growl. "This is a mistake. Lyra, you're mistaken. He is not your father." But Lyra, still trembling, shook her head vehemently. "No, he is, I know it. He's the one who saved me. He's the one who brought me here." The room was in chaos. The guards shifted uneasily, and the tension between the two women, one a queen, the other a scared child, was palpable. Jackson looked at Zarathia, his mind spinning. This was more than a simple misunderstanding. There was a connection here, one that neither he nor the Zalarian queen could explain. The idea of a human fathering the daughter of an alien queen was absurd, yet here they were, standing in the middle of it all. Zarathia's voice cut through the tension, cold and commanding. "Leave now, Captain. This conversation is over." But Jackson couldn't move. His mind was racing with questions. What was Lyra's story? Why did she believe him to be her father? As the room descended into further chaos, the only thing Jackson could think of was one question that repeated itself over and over in his mind. Who was Lyra, and why had she run to him for help? The quiet of the throne room felt unnerving after Lyra's outburst. The weight of the silence pressed down on Jackson like a physical force. Queen Zarathia stood near her throne, her sharp eyes never leaving her daughter as Lyra clung to Jackson, her body trembling with emotion. He hadn't known what to make of it at first. How had this young alien, this princess, come to believe that he was her father? There were too many questions and not enough answers. Zarathia, the ruler of the Xylothar Empire, had maintained her composure until now, but the surprise and anger in her eyes told Jackson everything he needed to know. This was a dangerous situation. "Lyra," Zarathia's voice was a mixture of frustration and sorrow. "You are mistaken. This human cannot be your father. This is a lie, and you know it." But Lyra shook her head, her hands gripping Jackson's uniform tightly. "No, Queen Zarathia, he is my father. I know it. I can feel it." Jackson's mind raced. There had to be some mistake, some misunderstanding, but as he looked down at Lyra, he couldn't shake the feeling that something deeper was at play. The way she looked at him, the desperation in her eyes, it felt so real. It felt true, but how could that be possible? "We need to talk," Jackson said, his voice steady despite the chaos swirling around them. He gently pried Lyra's hands off him and stood, walking toward Zarathia with the princess still by his side. Zarathia's gaze never wavered. "You have no place here. Leave now, Captain." "This is a matter for my family, not for outsiders." Jackson's voice remained firm. "I'm not leaving until I understand what's going on. I've been sent to negotiate peace, not to get caught in the middle of a family dispute." Zarathia's eyes narrowed. This is no family dispute. Lyra is my daughter. She was taken from me long ago. No human could have fathered her. The words hung in the air like a storm waiting to break. Lyra's face twisted in confusion, her eyes searching Jackson's for reassurance. Jackson turned back to her, his hand lightly resting on her shoulder. Lyra, he said softly, can you tell me what happened? Why do you think I'm your father? Lyra looked up at him, her violet eyes wide with a mixture of hope and fear. I remember being scared. I was just a child, but I remember the humans. There was a war. I didn't understand what was happening, but there were explosions and fire everywhere. I saw you then, Captain. You were there leading the humans, and I remember feeling safe, like you were protecting me. Jackson's heart skipped a beat. A war? He searched his memory, trying to place the time Lyra was describing, but nothing made sense. He had never been to this planet before, at least not in any capacity that would have brought him in contact with the royal family. Zarathia's voice interrupted the moment. She is mistaken. You do not understand, Captain. This is a matter of genetics. Lyra's conception was part of a genetic experiment, one that was meant to keep her safe, hidden away. The human you're thinking of, he was an operative, a soldier, a man who participated in that experiment, but it was not you. Jackson stared at Zarathia, trying to make sense of her words. An experiment? The Queen nodded, her tone turning darker. Many years ago, when the Xylothar Empire was at war with the humans, there were factions within our people that believed we could benefit from merging our genes with those of your species. We were at a stalemate in the war. We had technology power, but our numbers were small. The humans were fierce, their warriors unmatched, so we tried something. We tried creating an heir that would bridge the gap between us. Jackson's mind struggled to catch up with Zarathia's story. An experiment? A genetic hybrid between humans and Xylothar. It sounded like something out of a nightmare. What does this have to do with me? How does it connect to me? Zarathia's eyes hardened. The man who participated in that experiment was a human officer, part of a covert operation to test the possibility of hybridization. But the details were lost in the chaos of the war. We never knew who the soldier was. All we knew was that a child was conceived. Lyra was that child. Jackson's head spun. He had been involved in covert operations, yes, but never anything like this. Never anything so unethical, so dangerous. I don't remember anything like that, he said quietly. I don't know anything about this. Lyra looked up at him, her face pale. But I remember you. I've always remembered you, Captain, in my dreams, in my memories. You were there when I needed someone. You saved me. Jackson's heart sank. He didn't know what to say. He wasn't the man she thought he was, yet there was something about the way she spoke that struck a chord deep inside him, something that felt undeniably real. Zarathia let out a sharp breath, turning away as if the weight of the conversation was too much for her to bear. This is impossible, she muttered. You, Captain Black, are nothing but a human soldier. You could never be the father of my daughter. Jackson felt a strange mix of guilt and confusion. He had not been the man Lyra believed him to be, but he couldn't simply ignore her belief in him. There was something about this young princess, something that made him want to protect her, to keep her safe. Even if he wasn't her biological father, he couldn't stand by and watch her suffer, not after everything she had been through. I didn't know about any of this, Jackson said, his voice softer now, but I can't leave until I understand more. If I'm the one you believe is connected to you, then we need to get to the bottom of this. We need to find out who I really am to you and how this happened. Zarathia gave him a cold stare, but it was clear that her composure was cracking. You don't know what you're asking, Captain. There are things in this galaxy that should remain buried. The truth about Lyra's origins is one of those things. For her safety, and for the safety of the Xylothar Empire, there are forces at work that you cannot understand. Jackson stood firm, his gaze unwavering. I've fought for peace before, Queen Zarathia. I've fought for people I didn't even know, but this is something else. If I'm connected to this in some way, I won't walk away. Not until we figure out what happened. Not until Lyra knows the truth. The room was silent for a long moment. Finally, Zarathia spoke, her voice quieter now, laced with something close to defeat. Very well, she said, but understand this, Captain Black. The truth may not be what you want it to be. The galaxy doesn't always give us the answers we seek. Jackson nodded, his mind racing. I'll take my chances. Lyra, still holding on to him, looked up at him with something that resembled hope in her eyes. You'll help me, won't you? You'll help me find the truth. Jackson's heart softened. "I will." As the day wore on, Jackson found himself once again in a tense and uncertain situation. He had come here as a negotiator, hoping to bring peace between two factions, but now he was entangled in something far more complicated. The truth about Lyra's heritage, about the experiment, and the connection to his own past was something that would take time to unravel, and time was something they didn't have much of. The Zalarian Empire was on the brink of civil war. Zarathia's enemies were already making their move, and Lyra's true identity, her hybrid nature, was something many would use to undermine her, to tear the Empire apart. Even worse, the very forces that had helped create her were now hunting her down. But one thing was certain: Jackson couldn't walk away from Lyra. No matter how complicated the truth was, no matter how dangerous the path ahead would be, he couldn't abandon her. Not when she needed him the most. And as the tension continued to build, as the stakes grew higher with each passing moment, Jackson knew that the next steps they took would decide not only their futures, but the future of the entire galaxy. The tension in the air around the Xylothar Palace was thick with uncertainty. What had begun as a simple diplomatic mission had turned into something far more dangerous than Jackson Black had ever imagined. Not only was he caught in the heart of a conflict between humans and aliens, but now he was involved in something personal. Lyra, the young alien princess, believed he was her father, and the very fate of the Xylothar Empire seemed to hang in the balance. Jackson could feel the weight of it all pressing down on him as he stood in a war room beneath the palace, surrounded by the most trusted members of Zarathia's court and a few members of his own team. Lyra was seated across from him, her hands clasped tightly in her lap. Her violet eyes were wide with uncertainty, but there was something else there now, something more. Hope that Jackson would help her. Hope that together they could find the answers that had been buried for so long. But that hope was fragile. And with each passing moment, the danger was becoming more real. "I still don't understand," Jackson said, rubbing his temple as he looked at Zarathia, who stood by a large map table, her eyes scanning the coordinates of the different Xylothar systems. "If Lyra is who she says she is, then what does that mean for the Xylothar Empire? What does it mean for us?" Zarathia turned, her face hard and unreadable. "It means war, Captain. It means my enemies will stop at nothing to use this information to take control of my throne. The moment they know the truth, everything will change." Jackson shook his head, disbelief still lingering. "But you're her mother, you're the queen. Why would they want to overthrow you?" Zarathia's eyes darkened. "Because they do not see me as the true ruler anymore. My reign has been questioned for years, and now, with the appearance of a human in Lyra's life, they will seize on it. They will claim Lyra is the key to overthrowing me." Lyra looked up at Zarathia, confusion filling her face. "But I don't want to take your throne, Mother. I just want to understand who I am." The queen's expression softened for a moment before hardening again. "The truth is dangerous, my daughter. Some truths must remain hidden for the safety of us all." Jackson couldn't help but feel sympathy for Lyra. She had spent her whole life believing one thing, only to find out that her entire existence had been manipulated. The pain in her eyes was real, and yet, despite everything, she had faith in Jackson. In him, the stranger. "Zarathia, if we don't find a way to make this work, to come to some sort of understanding, it's not just your empire that's at risk. It's everything. The humans are not going to back down, and if your enemies use this as a way to spark a war, the entire galaxy could burn." The queen didn't respond immediately. Her gaze flickered briefly to Lyra before she turned back to the map on the table. "I'm not asking for your help, Captain, but I will not let my enemies use my daughter to bring ruin to my people." Jackson's voice softened. "We can't let them use her at all. We need to work together. You've led your empire through countless battles. Now it's time to lead them through this together." Zarathia's shoulders stiffened. The room fell into an uneasy silence. Then finally she nodded, the movement almost imperceptible. "We have little time. I will allow you to help, but know this, Captain, if you fail, it will be the end of everything." In the days that followed, Jackson found himself at the heart of a dangerous game. The Xylothar Empire was a powerful force in the galaxy, but it was divided. There were factions within Zarathia's court that believed Lyra was a threat, that the human influence was dangerous. And there were others who saw Lyra as a tool, someone they could use to gain control of the throne. Jackson and Lyra spent hours together, talking, strategizing. He could see the weight of her past on her, the confusion and fear that lingered in her eyes. But there was also a fierce determination there. She wasn't going to let anyone control her destiny. She wanted to take charge of her own future, regardless of what anyone else thought. But the threat from within the Xylothar court was only part of the problem. Outside the palace, General Korath, a rising military leader who opposed Zarathia's rule, was making moves to claim the throne for himself. He had supporters, and he wasn't afraid to use violence to get what he wanted. Korath had learned of Lyra's existence. And now he was ready to make his move. The night before the final confrontation, Jackson stood outside the palace, looking out over the city. The lights of Xylothar's capital twinkled in the distance, but there was a heaviness in the air, an unsettling calm before the storm. Lyra had gone to her chambers to prepare, and Zarathia had retreated to her throne room to make her final decisions. Jackson's thoughts were with Lyra. He had seen so much in his career: battles, betrayals, wars that had torn entire civilizations apart. But this felt different. The stakes were higher than they had ever been before. He heard footsteps behind him and turned to see Lyra approaching. She was wearing a simple yet elegant outfit, her long silver hair flowing behind her. There was something about her presence, something that made her seem older than she really was. In the short time he had known her, he had seen her transform from a scared child into a leader in her own right. "Are you ready?" Jackson asked, his voice low. Lyra nodded, though her eyes betrayed the nerves she was feeling. "I have to be. There's no turning back now. If Korath takes control, it's over for all of us. The peace we've been working for, it'll be shattered." Jackson stepped closer to her, placing a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "We'll face it together. You're not alone in this," she smiled faintly. "Thank you, Captain. I still don't understand everything about what's happened, about who I am, but I know one thing for sure. I'm not going to let anyone destroy what we've worked for. Not now, not ever." The battle that came the next day was swift and brutal. General Korath's forces attacked the palace under the cover of darkness, aiming to take control of the royal seat. His army, vast and powerful, clashed with the palace guards in an explosion of energy and violence. Jackson was right there, alongside Lyra, as the battle raged around them. His training kicked in as he moved with precision, leading the defense and working with the Xylothar soldiers to fight back Korath's forces. But the real battle wasn't the one fought with guns and weapons. The true fight was the one for the future of the galaxy. If Zarathia's reign fell, it would send shockwaves through the entire empire. And if Lyra could prove herself as the rightful ruler, it would unite both the humans and the Xylothar under one banner. Amid the chaos, Lyra stepped forward, commanding the troops with an authority that surprised even Jackson. "We will not back down," she shouted, her voice clear and strong. "We will fight for our future, for peace." With those words, the Xylothar forces rallied, pushing back Korath's troops with renewed strength. By the end of the battle, Korath's forces had been defeated. The palace, though damaged, stood. Zarathia stood beside Lyra, watching as the remaining rebels were taken into custody. Jackson stood to the side, his breath heavy with the exertion of battle. He could feel the weight of everything that had happened, the fight, the decisions, the alliances that had been forged in the heat of battle. Zarathia turned to Lyra, her eyes softening for the first time since they had met. "You have proven yourself today, daughter. The throne is yours if you choose it." Lyra glanced at Jackson, her expression determined. "I choose it, but I will not rule alone. We will rule together for the good of both our people." Jackson nodded, understanding what she meant. This wasn't just about one planet, one empire. This was about the future of the galaxy. Together they had forged a new path. In the days that followed, peace was established once more. The Xylothar Empire had a new ruler, one who was both human and alien. The war that had threatened to destroy them all had been averted, and now, with Lyra on the throne, there was hope for a better future. Jackson Black knew that this was just the beginning. There would be challenges ahead, but for the first time he truly believed that peace could be achieved. And as he stood with Lyra, watching the sunrise over a united world, he knew that together they could face whatever came next. The galaxy had changed, and so had they.